Hello. Okay. Good evening. I'm sorry I'm late. So we will start the class now. Okay. And let me just once check. Let me first share my screen and then check whether the document has been scanned properly or not. So let me share my screen. I hope you can see the screen. Can someone confirm?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So we'll start with a recap. Just let us check once whether the scanning has been done correctly or not. And let me upload it in the screen. So I hope all of you are doing okay because at your home here in the campus we have a few corona cases right now, and things are going worse actually. A lot of cases in the staff quarter and in faculty quarter also. Some cases have come. So 31 is 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Yes, so it is scanned correctly. So we were discussing about the nature of PD. Okay, so in the previous class, we were discussing about the nature of PD. And let me just keep the chat also open in case you have some questions. So I had a meeting, so I got delayed. Reduce the size. So we will continue that discussion today. Okay. So we have noted that in thermal and fluid flow problems, most of the processes can be approximated by means very closely approximated by partial differential equations, particularly second order partial differential equations. Okay. So say there is a natural phenomena. Okay. The natural phenomena does not depend on any equations. It's just a natural phenomena. But if we want to study that natural phenomena, we study it or we study the changes what is happening in the natural phenomena. For example, how the flow is changing or temperature is changing or energy is changing, enthalpy is changing, internal energy is changing or any other variable is changing. All this we can either study experimentally or we can model them using suitable equations. So the closest equations which describe that phenomena are known as governing equations, and these are typically for thermal and fluid flow problems. Most of the equations are second order partial differential equations that we have discussed in the previous class, and we have seen some of the basics of PD. You have studied in your PD course or mathematical methods course. You are studying in more depth. This is not the course for learning PD. We are just touching upon PD so that we can understand how the nature of PD affects our computational solution algorithm. You can still hear me, right? Just one final confirmation. Then we will jump into the.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So after that we have seen what is the order. So I am already saying second order PD. So order of PD is basically the order of the highest derivative term in the equation. Okay. So we have noted for second order PD, for example, highest derivative is the second derivative. Okay, this is our example of second order partial differential equation. And what we have seen in the previous class also is that uh, only the highest derivative terms, means for a second order PD, only the second order terms. For example, this is a generic second order PD, means if we write all the terms, all the possible terms in a second order PD, it will form this equation. This equation has all the possible terms for a second order PD. You have three second order terms: double derivative with respect to x, double derivative with respect to y, and mixed derivative with respect to x and y, and then single derivative with respect to x and y, and no derivatives, just the dependent variable, and all other independent variables are constant in this g term. So this is the generic or general term or general equation for a second order PD, and we have seen that for this case the characteristics or the nature of the PD, how the solution will behave, depends only on the coefficients of these highest order terms, for which for this case is the second order terms. This we have seen, and we have stated some formula also. So we have also seen what is linear and non-linear PD. Let us not go into the details. We noted that linear PD is a PD where all the coefficients are independent of the dependent variable, and non-linear that if at least one coefficient is dependent on the dependent variable. This will come into picture later on. We will see that linear equations are much easier to solve as compared to non-linear equations. Okay, non-linear equations need some sort of iterative solution for numerically solving them. Analytical solution may be possible, but for iteratively solving them, for numerically solving them, some iterative solution is necessary. Please remember that when I'm showing something on the screen, there is most of the time there is a lag between my voice comes first and the cursor moves later. So you have to bear with that. Every week I remind you that, because I may say something like, okay, here you can see this, but you might be noticing something else because your screen is moving slower. Okay, so you have to bear that in mind. If you are confused, please ask me questions. So we have seen here, as I am showing you, b square minus 4ac. So depending on the coefficients a, b, and c for this general PDE, second order PD, depending on that b square minus 4ac, if it is less than 0, we call the equation as elliptic equation, and we say that there are no characteristic lines which are real. Means there can be imaginary characteristic lines, but there are no real characteristic lines. For parabolic equations, b square minus 4ac is equal to 0, and only one real characteristic line exists. One real and distinct characteristic line exists. One real solution, distinct solution exists. And if b square minus 4ac is greater than 0, there are two real and distinct characteristics. Okay, so for a 2D case, it means that these characteristics are lines. Okay, two real lines are there, and we call this equation as hyperbolic equation. Okay, so this is the general statement as you will see in books, but how this has been derived, that also we have seen. Okay, so based on this generic equation, I am not going into the details, but we have seen that we call a characteristic the locus of the points, for which case the solution for the highest order derivative does not exist. Okay, the solution of the highest order derivative does not exist, means there is a discontinuity in the highest order derivative. So for a 2D case, it is this continuity exists as a line. Okay, so it means that there is a jump across a line, and we call this as characteristic lines. And to find this discontinuity of the line, we have to solve for the case where the solution of these equations do not exist, which happens when the determinant of this coefficient matrix A is equal to 0, which we have seen. Again, I am jumping, but which has actually basically led us to the same conclusion. Okay, after all this calculation, it has led us to the same conclusion that if b square minus 4ac is less than 0, there is no real solution. If b square minus 4ac equal to 0, there is a single distinct real solution, and if b square minus 4ac is greater than 0, there are two distinct real solutions. Okay, and this dy dx relates the, basically it gives the position of the line. Okay, if you solve this, you will get the location of the line. Okay. So this is it is important to remember that this classification is only valid for second order PDE. You cannot use this for any other orders. Okay, you cannot say that okay, we will use it b square minus 4. This is for only this particular case. Okay, even we will see that it is not only for this particular case, only two-dimensional cases like this. Means what we mean by two-dimensional case, two independent variables are there like x and y or x and t. Okay, only for these cases, so two-dimensional second order partial differential equation, we can use this b square minus 4ac type of condition, b square minus 4ac condition, to find out the nature of the solution. Okay, and in the previous class we concluded the class with a case, with the first case where we wanted to know what is the significance of this classification. Okay, so it is fine that we are classifying our equations into different forms, but what is meant by that? Okay, how is it going to impact us? Whether it's elliptical or parabolic, we are giving some nomenclature, but why we are studying? So actually, studying this because our solution algorithm depends on the classification. So our solution algorithm has to depend on whether it is a parabolic equation, then the solution algorithm will be different. If it is an elliptic equation, then the solution algorithm will be different. If it is a hyperbolic equation, our solution algorithm will be different. We will also see cases where the equation can change from elliptic to hyperbolic or parabolic depending on some terms in the equation. In that case, we should have a more general algorithm which can cater to all types of equations. Okay, more general algorithm. And I will just go through the conclusion of the previous class. So where we studied the Laplace equation, which is a very familiar equation for you guys, where we study many engineering applications which can be written in terms of this form: del square some variable equal to 0. Okay, del square some scalar variable equal to 0. For example, for steady 2D heat conduction equation, we can write del square t del x square plus del square t del y square equal to 0. And for this example, you can compare it with the generic equation which we have described previously, and you can see that a equal to 1, b equal to 0, and c equal to 1. And as a result, b square minus 4ac is equal to minus 4. And hence, according to our condition, this is an elliptic equation. Okay. It is also well known that this Laplace equation is elliptic equation. Okay. And what was the physical significance of this elliptic equation? We noted that if we introduce any disturbance or any perturbation or say any source term or anything, any change in the domain, okay, remember that this is a 2D domain. What are the independent variables in this 2D domain? The independent variables are x and y. Okay, so here these are the space coordinates x and y, and this is the, so the extent of the domain is from x equal to 0 to L and y is equal to 0 to M, and this is bounded like this. Okay, so anywhere if you introduce a perturbation, the change due to the perturbation should be accommodated in all points of the domain at the same instance. Okay, that's the meaning of also of the steady state. Means anywhere some change occurs, this entire steady state solution will change for the entire domain, right? It's not like a transient problem where slowly the temperature evolution will occur. If I introduce a source term here, slowly the temperature will change somewhere. In a steady state problem, if there was no source term and you have introduced a source term, then the solution will change everywhere in the domain directly. Okay, you have to solve for the entire domain directly, and it means that your solution algorithm which you develop, so it is in discretized form. So for this point P, when you want to calculate the temperature for this point P, it should take into account the temperature in from all directions of P. Okay, it's a two-way coordinate system. So P can influence the temperature in all directions, and the temperature in all directions can also influence the temperature at P. Okay, so this also we have discussed. We can also write this as if the disturbance travels in all directions at infinite speed. Sometimes this is confusing to understand because there is no time variable. Okay, so you may say if there is no time, how it is traveling at infinite speed? It means basically that this perturbation has to be accounted everywhere at the same instant, means during the solution. Okay, so that is the meaning, and we have also noted that like whatever I have just said now, all points in the domain will feel the effect of disturbance or change instantaneously. Any change at point P influences the value of all other points of the domain instantly, and any changes at any locations in the domain also affect the temperature at point P. Okay, it's a two-way coordinate system, two-way coupling. Okay, this also means that there is no discontinuity in the domain, in the solid. The solution has to be continuous. If there is discontinuity, it will instantly smoothen out because there will be heat transfer from one side to the other if there is discontinuity, and the solution will smoothen out. Okay, so it formal terms it is known as the solution is smooth for this case. Okay, and if we compare with our definition of characteristics, it means that because there is no discontinuity within the domain, it means that there are no real jumps within the domain. It means that there are no lines across which this jump occurs. So no characteristic lines exist within the domain. No real characteristic line exists within the domain, or no jump exists across the domain. Okay, this is what was the meaning of the case that we have studied in the previous case. Then finally we concluded that this type of problems are also known as boundary value problems because we need to provide conditions for all the edges of the domain. Here the edges of the domain are the spatial edges, means in terms of x and y. So for all the boundaries in terms of x and y, we have to give the conditions. Okay, these are known as boundary conditions, and as a result this is known as boundary value problem. This is up to our discussion up to the previous class. We will keep the generic form of the solution to the equation open because we will keep referring to it. Okay, so this is the generic form of this equation. And now we will go to other cases. Any questions? What we have discussed in the previous class? We will not go into maths of PDs. Okay, our aim is to just understand the nature of solution. We have seen that for elliptic PD, we have already established that nature of solution is that solution at one point should influence the solution at all other points, and solution at all other, and the solution at that point is also dependent on the solution at all other points. Means it's a two-way coupling. And any boundary information is passed to all parts of the domain because it has to be the case, because the solution is dependent at all points, so it is also dependent on all the boundary points. So any change at the boundary is also passed to all parts of the domain. So any point is influenced by all the conditions given at the boundary. You may feel that it should be always the case, right? If we give some boundary condition, it has to influence the solution everywhere at any point. But we will see later that that is not always the case for other types of equation. Okay, it may not happen. Let us go to our second case. Any questions up to this point? We have gone very slowly in the physical point of view, but we have not gone into much depth in the PD part. For going into more depth into PD, please refer to some PD courses. Okay, for our course, this much is sufficient. This much knowledge of PD is sufficient. So next, let us take case 2. Okay, these are very standard cases. All CFD courses you will see these cases. Okay, you take any CFD book or any CFD course, online course, any course, you will see that these are the standard equations through which they give the examples of PDs. Okay, so our second example, standard example, is the 1D unsteady diffusion equation. Okay, recording is still going on. Yes. 1D unsteady diffusion equation. It can be unsteady diffusion equation for species transfer or any other case. So for our example, we will take heat conduction, 1D unsteady heat conduction. So for 1D unsteady heat conduction, we can obviously, every one of you know that. Just hold on for a second. I will have to take this one call has come. I have to take this call. Okay. Sorry for the delay. So I am back. I hope you can still hear me. Okay. Please confirm once again. Okay. In case the
Yes,
is
sir.
not working. Okay. Sorry. Actually, we are having a lot of delays. Anyway, let us come back to this. We have a lot of material, but we will go slowly because this part is slightly tricky for some of you. So we are taking of 1D unsteady heat conduction. diffusivity of temperature is equal to alpha del square T del X square, where alpha is the thermal diffusivity, okay, K by dou Cp. Now, according to our generic equation, of second variables x and c. That's why we have these partial derivatives. So that's why it's a PDE. Okay, and I can write this equation in the form alpha del square T del X square minus del T equal to 0. Okay, now if you compare this with the general form, what are the values of A, B, and remember that all this D, E, F, and G, we just put it in a single term H, which can be put in a single term because these are all the lower order terms. This does not influence the nature of our solution. Okay. So only for the higher order terms. So A, if you compare, A is the diffusivity, no mixed derivative. B is equal to 0, and there is also the second independent variable. So C is also equal to 0. This is a lower order term. C is also equal to 0. Okay. So which means that B square minus 4AC is equal to 0. So this is a parabolic equation. This is how books define this. Okay. Actually, it's not exactly parabolic. Only in the we will come to that. But this is typically called as a parabolic equation. Okay. So what is the significance of the fact that this is a parabolic equation? How is it different from the previous case? Okay. So now let us consider this domain of the problem. I will increase the size a little bit. Let us consider the domain of the problem. Okay. Domain of this problem or domain of solution does not mean always the spatial domain, right? Domain is the domain encompassed by the independent variables, variation of the independent variables. So what are our independent variables? Our independent variables are x and t. So the domain varies. Say we have a 1D object. We are studying 1D heat conduction in an object of length L. Okay. So it's like a rod or stick of length L. And we are studying this for time from t equal to 0 to t equal to 100 seconds. Sometime t equal to 100 seconds. We want to find the temperature variation in that rod or stick along the length from 0 to L, and how it varies with time from 0 to 100 seconds. Okay. So the domain of our solution varies from 0 to L in the x direction, and the other independent direction is t, time direction. So it varies from 0 to 100 seconds. Let us call this as t last. Okay. So this is our problem solution domain. If I draw these lines, this parallel line from t last and this vertical line at x equal to L. So this entire rectangle blue region is our solution domain. Okay. So this gives us the value of temperature at any point in the solution domain. For example, at this point, okay, I am putting the mouse cursor at some point within the rectangle or at some other point here. The value of t depends on the value of x and time. Value of t means value of temperature depends on the value of x and time at that point. Okay, because it's a function of x and time. So this is our solution domain. Now let us look at the nature of this solution from physical point of view. Okay. Let there be a case where we have proceeded till t equal to 40 seconds. Okay, time equal to 40 seconds. So we are at a point where time is 40 seconds. So at that time, how will I locate the time in this domain? If I draw a horizontal line like this dashed red line, okay, this dashed red line is the horizontal line which represents time equal to 40 seconds for all x values. X can vary from 0 to L. Okay. So at this point, the temperature can be the temperature at any point between 0 to L, like along the length of the rod, but only at time t equal to 40 seconds. Okay. Now let us introduce a disturbance or source term or some perturbation. Okay, some variation, some fluctuation, some change at a point in the rod. or the stick. Say at the center point of the stick, I have changed the temperature suddenly, or I have introduced a heat source at that moment. Okay, so this we are going to call this as disturbance or perturbation at this point. So if we introduce this, where will the change be felt at that moment of time? Where will the change be felt at that moment of time? Spatially, it will still be felt over the entire length of the rod. Remember what we have discussed in the previous class. Okay, disturbance is felt everywhere does not mean that already the energy is transferred there. Or for example, what we were giving the example of a very long pipe, like 100-kilometer long pipe. Okay, it means that if I open the tap at the end of a 100-kilometer long pipe and the flow starts there, it is, if it's incompressible flow, the disturbance or the change in pressure is felt by the other end of the pipe 100 kilometers away instantly, and it understands that okay, we have to start the flow from here so that the flow 100 kilometers away can occur at the tap. Okay, so instantly the disturbance has traveled there, the information regarding the disturbance has traveled there. However, the flow has not actually reached from that end of the pipe to the other end. Flow will reach slowly. Maybe the velocity is only 10 meters per second. So it will take 10,000 for the flow to reach there. Okay. So the actual flow reaches after a long time, but the information that some disturbance has occurred reaches instantly in the spatial direction if it is an incompressible substance. Okay. For flow, and if it is a Fourier heat conduction for heat transfer. So considering Fourier heat conduction, if we introduce any disturbance here at time t equal to 40 seconds, instantly at that time, anywhere along the domain, the information reaches that some change has occurred there. Okay. It does not mean that temperature is going to change there. It only means that it has the information that some changes occurred there, and accordingly it has to act. Okay. However, what happens in the time direction? Time direction going forward along the time, obviously the solution will be dependent on any perturbation that has occurred here. Okay, so if we introduce a source term here, it will change the heat transfer or the temperature variation across the length of the rod at any point beyond 40 seconds. So say another line is there at t equal to 60 seconds. The entire rod temperature will depend on whatever perturbation was introduced at t equal to 40 seconds. Okay, so any point beyond this point in the time direction gets influenced by the perturbation or disturbance here. Okay, so if our solution domain is t equal to t last, so any point beyond this disturbance up to t equal to t last will feel the change that was introduced here. Okay, so this hashed blue lines shows the domain which is getting influenced by the disturbance introduced at this red point. Okay, this is known as domain of influence. So for our point P, where the disturbance was introduced, the domain of influence is this region by the blue lines and the red dashed lines as shown by hashed lines here. Okay, and this red dashed line is known as the characteristic line for this case, because across this line there is a discontinuity. Okay. Let me elaborate further and then you can ask the questions. Okay. Will the solution change at any point beyond this line in the downward t direction? Obviously, we know from nature that if something happens at this point in time, we cannot change what has happened in the past. So our solution in the past, the temperature that was present in the past cannot change. Okay, time is a one-way coordinate. So the solution at any point in the domain in the past cannot change based on what is happening at present. Okay, so if we introduce any disturbance at present, it will not change the solution at any point in the past. So the solution at any point in the past is not not influenced by this point P, and there is a jump across this red line because suddenly the change has happened across this red line. So if the temperature was something else, say temperature was 0 degree across the entire line before at the initial condition, and at this point I put a very large heat source at point P. So suddenly the temperature will jump from T equal to 0 to T equal to some very large value, say 1000 degrees centigrade. So there is a jump across the red line. Okay. So there is a discontinuity, hence this is like a characteristic line. Okay. So we have only one characteristic line, and this is along the direction of time, as time behaves as a one-way coordinate. But there is no characteristic line, or there is no jump across the direction, across the spatial direction, because for this heat conduction problem, this spatial direction acts like a two-way coordinate. Means information can pass both way. Okay. So behavior is such that any point along the spatial direction at a particular time will influence any other point along the spatial direction. Okay. So I hope this is clear. We will revisit this in a second. Let me just go through the lines that I have written. Everything what I have described is written here. So T or time is a one-way coordinate and can only influence the future, or as we already know from nature. Okay. If some change occurs at a point. If not at 40 seconds, say the disturbance was introduced at T equal to 80 seconds, then our characteristic line for that disturbance would have been here at 80 seconds, means quite higher, and everything below would have been outside the domain of influence, and anything above it only would have been the domain of influence. Okay. Anything below would have been beyond the domain of influence. Okay. These type of problems are also called as time marching problem because we just march along the time direction. And we have seen when we studied about one-way code that the solution at the next time step depends on the solution at the previous time step only, and we can just march along the time. Solution does not depend on the future time. So if it only depends on the previous time, we can devise an algorithm which is very simple. We can just store the values at the current time and at the previous time and just march along the time. Okay. You will learn this in more depth when we study about explicit solution after a few classes. And those who have studied CFD course with me already knows this. Okay. And we have also discussed that there is a discontinuity across the length at time when the disturbance is given. So at the point of time when the disturbance is given, there is the discontinuity of the characteristic line. Okay. So now the important thing to note here is that although sometimes some books will describe this problem as parabolic, it is very important to note that the problem has a one-way characteristic or one-way behavior only along the time direction. Along the space direction, it still has a two-way behavior. Okay. Similar to a ellipse. Okay. So in actual case, although we are not going to prove it here, in actual case, it is important to note that the entire problem is not parabolic. Okay. Only the variation along the time direction is parabolic. Variation with respect to space is still elliptic in nature. Okay. So for example, if you consider that you are solving the problem for a very long time, and whatever fluctuations in temperature was there has reached a steady state, means there is not much variation with respect to, okay, it has reached a steady state. So if it has reached a steady state, it means that nothing is changing with time. This delta T term goes to 0. Okay, and the only term that square T del x square or d square T dx square, which is actually a Laplace equation of like a one-dimensional Laplace equation. Okay, its nature is actually elliptic. You cannot prove this using b square minus 4ac because it does not have two variables. Okay, it does not have two independent variables. Our b square minus 4ac was valid only for two independent variables. If you try to put b square minus 4ac here, you will find that it is parabolic, but actually this is elliptic because it is of Laplace, it is of type Laplace equation, and for a single be proven that this is also the nature is elliptic. But intuitively or from the physical point of view, we can observe that this is elliptic because any point here along the space direction. So if I have a physical rod, okay, if I have a physical rod, it can, let me see whether I can draw it here. Okay, something already drawn here. Let me erase this. Okay. So if I can draw something here, say we have a line like this, okay, and we have a point here. So its influence will pass along any direction, along both the directions. If it is a Fourier heat conduction problem, okay, instantaneously it will pass. So at any time t, the entire rod feels the information. Okay, this is what I mean. So this is the x direction. This is our x direction. So along the x direction, and we have still elliptic nature. Only along the time direction we have parabolic nature. So it is better to call this problem as parabolic in time and elliptic in space. Okay, not only just a elliptic problem. It's parabolic in time and elliptic in space. Okay, I have mentioned here you cannot show this using b square minus 4ac less than 0 as the condition was valid only for 2D problem. 2D means 2D does not mean spatial 2D. 2D means two independent variables. The previous problem, unsteady heat conduction equation, was 2D because we had two independent variables, time and x. It has become 1D because there is no variation with respect to time. Now it has become 1D and our b square minus 4 condition cannot be given. Okay. This is also known as initial boundary value problem. Why initial value problem? Initial because you need to give an initial condition. Okay. So let us look again at this problem domain. Let us look again at this problem domain. Okay. To start the problem, you need to give a condition for time t equal to 0 for all x values. Okay. Otherwise, you cannot start the problem. So this condition for time t equal to 0 for all x values is known as initial condition. Okay. So this is felt along this line, time t equal to 0 but all x values from 0 to L. Then we also have to give condition for all time from t equal to 0 to t last, but only at the two ends of the rod. Okay. So two ends of the rod means only 2 points because it's a 1D rod, it's only 2 points, right? So at only 2 points I have to give the condition. So at x equal to 0 I will give temperature T equal to 0 degrees centigrade, and x equal to L I will give temperature T equal to 100 degrees centigrade. Okay. So we have to give boundary conditions only at 2 points, but this shows up as lines here because the boundary condition exists over the entire time duration. Okay. So although the x is a point, the time is a line here. Okay. Time is varying from 0 to t last, and the boundary condition is valid for the entire time duration. Boundary condition may also change at some time. So for example, boundary condition from 0 to 80 second is t equal to 0 degree, and suddenly we change the boundary condition from 0 degree to 1000 degree at t equal to 80 second. That can also happen. What will happen in that case? The solution will be affected only at the time after that time and not before that time, but across the entire space, because space acts as a two-way coordinate or elliptic, and time acts as a one-way coordinate or parabolic in nature. Okay, this is also very important. So because boundary conditions also are needed for the x direction, two boundary conditions are needed. Why two boundary conditions? Because we have a double derivative, and one initial condition because this is a single derivative, first order derivative. So it is known as an initial boundary value problem. Okay, initial boundary value problem. So time for questions now for the second case. Any questions? Feel free to ask me, even if it is a simple question or anything. If I am unable to answer, I will try to clarify in the next class. Otherwise, anything related to physical part, if you do not understand the significance or do not understand why this is, why we cannot use b square minus 4ac here, or anything related to that.
Sir,
Yes.
about this initial boundary condition, I want to ask.
Yes.
Generally, we will take pre-initialization and something when we do solution and all. But boundary conditions generally we able to figure out like how much mass flow rate we are giving or how much heat source is giving or how much outlet boundary conditions are thing. Then in any problem, how we can find out that this will be my initial boundary condition I should choose, or how we
No,
can
okay, okay. Let me clarify. We don't have initial boundary condition. The condition is, the problem is known as initial boundary value problem. Initial is a separate word, boundary is a separate word. Okay, because we know I will come to your question later, but let me first explain because I think there is some confusion here. We need separately the initial condition and separately boundary condition. Okay, so it is initial plus boundary value problem, not the initial boundary value problem. Initial plus boundary value problem. Now coming to your question. Okay, so when you use a CFD tool like, for example, ANSYS Fluent, okay, there, to simplify the process for the users, they give you some options of giving the conditions in a easier way. Okay, for example, what is the mass flow rate, what is the exit condition, exit pressure. Okay, like this they will give how to initialize the problem, but internally they are actually specifying the initial and boundary conditions depending on the equations and what mass flow rate or whatever you have given. Okay, they will calculate the boundary condition. Okay, boundary condition cannot be a mass flow rate. Boundary condition has to be for a flow problem. It has to be either, if you are not solving for pressure, it has to be some velocity or velocity gradient. Okay, either u is some value or del u del x or del u del y is equal to some value, like a Dirichlet type of boundary condition or a Neumann type of boundary condition or a wall condition where the gradient is 0. Okay, so when you give in Fluent that mass flow rate is 10 kg per second, it already calculates the area of the inlet cross section based on your geometry, and also you have given the density and properties of the fluid. Then from that it calculates what should be the initial velocity. Okay, so it is boundary condition. It cannot be a mass flow rate. It has to be the, in terms of the variable that you are solving. I will come to your question, Gulshan, later on. If your variable is u velocity, you have to give the boundary condition in terms of u velocity. If it is time, you have to give the condition in terms of time. Okay, when we give the condition in terms of time, instead of calling it as boundary condition, we call it as initial condition. Now in a CFD solver, you have to always give some initial values, like your, say for example, if you're solving for the flow in a room, temperature in a room, you have to give what is at time t equals to 0, what is the temperature variation in at all the points in the room. That is the initial condition. Okay, so if the room is a 1D room, if you just take a 1D rod or something, 1D cross section, then the initial condition will look like this in a 1D room. If it is a 2D room, you have to imagine a cube here, means a 2D surface area like this. Maybe I can draw again. Okay, so but drawing is difficult on this slate. Okay, so you have to imagine that, so drawing will not be accurate. Something like this. Okay, so very poor drawing, but you have to manage with that. So this entire direction, okay, is x, entire direction, this direction is y, and this vertical direction is time. Okay, so if it's a 2D transient problem, now you have three independent variables, x, y, and time. Okay, your initial condition now have to be given for all xy. Okay, and that is how you give in the solver in your fluent problem or everywhere. You may state that initial temperature in the domain is 100 degrees centigrade. You do not state at each point it is 100 degree, but the fluent internally it calculates that okay, at all ij values, at all x and y values, I have to take the initial condition Tij to be 100 degree. Okay, and so along the entire plane the initial condition will be there, and the boundary condition, where will be the boundary condition in that case? Along this all the vertical planes the boundary condition will be there. Okay, so this is how it is taken. Who had asked this question, previous question? I could not get actually who asked the question.
I asked.
Lokesh. Lokesh, okay. Good question. So it is that separately you have to consider initial condition and boundary condition for this problem, and because both types of conditions are needed, it is known as initial plus boundary value problem, as compared to the elliptic problem where only boundary condition is needed, no initial condition is needed. As a result, that was considered as boundary value problem. Okay. One very important distinction here is that for the time coordinate, because it's a one-way coordinate, the condition is needed only at one side of the time, not at the other side of the time. Okay, so we don't, for space we need the condition at both sides of the space, right? We need at L equal to 0 and L equal, like x equal to 0 and x equal to L. If we go to the elliptic case, I will go back to the elliptic case. It's a very important distinction that you have to make. We need condition for both x equal to 0 and x equal to L, as well as for y equal to 0 and y equal to L. So at all sides of the domain you need the conditions. But for here you need the condition for x equal to 0 and x equal to L. So both sides of x, but only one side of time. You do not need any condition at the other side of time. And we know from physical nature that there is no point in giving other side, like we cannot specify what happens in future. You cannot say that in future at time equal to 100 seconds the temperature has to be 100 degrees centigrade, because it will automatically evolve. Okay, so as a result time has only one condition, one initial condition in this case. Okay, due to the nature of the problem. Gulshan was asking, sir, how can we say that discontinuity will come when the source of energy is introduced? Okay, what we mean by discontinuity or disturbance is that there can be a sudden jump that can occur. Okay, so for example, say there is your rod. Okay, where is my pen? Okay, say I have the rod again. This rod, this is x equal to 0. Difficult to write with this, and this is x equal to L. Okay, and initially everywhere the temperature T initial is 0 degree centigrade. Okay, this is the initial condition. So now boundary condition is something different. Okay, boundary condition is that boundary condition also is say T is equal to 0 degree centigrade at x equal to 0, and T is equal to 0 degree centigrade at x equal to L. Okay, so everywhere the temperature is same, it is not changing with time. So at a certain time, say T equal to 40 seconds, small t equal to 40 seconds. Okay, T equal to 40 seconds after the start of the problem, I change the temperature at this point to, so say this point is x equal to L by 2. Okay, I change the temperature here to very high value. Okay, so temperature at L by 2 at 40 seconds is say 1000 degree centigrade in this rod. It's a steel rod, so it is become 1000 degree centigrade. Okay. Immediately it will influence the temperature along this both this direction. Okay, along this direction and along this direction. Immediately it will influence the temperature. However, what will happen along the time direction? Okay, what is the time coordinate here? Time coordinate is the vertical coordinate, right? We are drawing the time coordinate as the vertical coordinate. So it's very difficult to draw here. So this is the vertical coordinate time. You have to imagine this. I will go back to. So if this is the x equal to 0, this is the same rod. Okay, x equal to 0 and x equal to L. But at time t equal to 0 and same rod at time t equal to 40 seconds here. If you plot the temperature along the time, what is happening? So now this is the time direction. I have rotated the coordinate. This is the time direction and this is temperature. So our temperature was 0, 0, 0, 0. So this is 0 degree centigrade. Up to 40 and at 40 seconds suddenly temperature has gone to a very high value. Okay. This is become 1000 degree centigrade. It will not remain 1000 degree because there may be some dissipation that occurs. So after that it may change or it may go down with time. But there is a sudden jump from 0 degree to 1000 degree and this will not get changed. This will not dissipate. This jump will always be there. This jump will always be there. Even if you proceed further, okay, even if the dissipation occurs first along with time, temperature goes down to 500, 400, 300 after a long time. It may even go to 0 also after a long time. Like it goes to 0 after a long time. But this jump is always present in the domain. Remember, our solution domain is still the 0 to L and 0 to T last. So this jump across this line is always there. Okay. And hence we are saying that there is a discontinuity. Okay. Whenever there is some perturbation here, this perturbation can be some temperature change or it can be some source of energy. Source of energy is nothing but some change in temperature ultimately. It will manifest as some change in temperature. Gulshan, is it clear to you?
Yes, sir, clear, sir.
Okay, let us pause here for a moment for 5 minutes. I will take a break to rest my voice. I am talking for a long time because I had a meeting before this also. And we will go to some other cases, 2, 3 more cases. Okay, some standard cases as well as some non-standard cases. And let us pause here for a minute. Okay. So, okay, I am back. Can you still hear me, students? And see the screen also?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let us continue. Okay, so we are going quite slowly, but this part is slightly tricky. That's why we wanted to go a little bit slowly. Once we go into the CFD part from the next class onward, then actual course means CFD part uh, will go at a standard pace. So our third equation is also a very standard equation. Again, all CFD example books again. Why these three equations are given any CFD books or anywhere? Because these equations are practical in nature and are used to represent the three types of cases that I have shown: elliptic, parabolic, and hyperbolic. Okay. There can be many other types of parabolic or hyperbolic equations. I will show you another case, case 4. But that is a slightly different, that is not a standard equation, but let us start with the standard equation. Okay, del square u del t square plus c square, this cannot be removed, or it's always there. So this is causing me irritation. Anyway, so del square u del t square equal to c square del square u del x square. Very standard equation. This is known as 1D wave equation, where u can be many different types of scalar quantity. Okay, it can be many different types of scalar quantity, which is a function of two independent variables, x and t. Okay, it is a function of two independent variables, x and t. So again, one dimension, spatial dimension x, and one temporal dimension time. Obviously, there can be only one temporal dimension time. So actually, it's a 2D problem in the way mathematically it's a 2D problem. Spatially, it's a 1D problem. Mathematically, it has two independent variables. Okay. And what are some examples of u? U can be, say, the scalar pressure variable in a fluid. Okay. So we have a compressible flow, and the pressure at any point can be u. And if we give some perturbation to the pressure wave moves from that point in some directions as waves. So if we give some variation in pressure, it moves as some waves with a velocity which is equal to the speed of sound c, and in that case this type of equation can be used to govern that or study that phenomena. Similarly, if there is a vibration problem, okay, if there is a vibration problem, say there is a solid body and some vibration is occurring of the particles in the solid body are vibrating from their original position uh, with a certain displacement, then that displacement can be represented by u, and that displacement is a function of x and t, and this type of equation governs this. For example, I have a string that is pulled between two ends like a guitar string. Okay, and if I pluck, it will start vibrating. So the distance of the, so I say I pull the middle of the string of that guitar string. Okay, and it starts vibrating. So the distance of all the points in the string from its initial rest position can be given by this variable u, and x is the direction along the length of the string and t is the direction along time. Okay, so this type of equation can be used to govern this also. Okay, so the main physical property, as we will see later, is that for all these type of problems, the information passes at a finite velocity, not at an infinite rate. For our Fourier, yes, just wait a minute. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so for our Fourier conduction problem or for a incompressible flow problem, as I have described, like 100-kilometer long pipe, the information passes at an infinite speed, but for these type of problems like flow of pressure waves in a compressible fluid, or if you are plucking a guitar string, the vibration that is traveling from the point where you have put that perturbation in the string, it moves at a certain speed, and that speed is equal to the speed of propagation of the wave. Okay, it is also, it will be, we will see that it is also equal to c, the variable c here. Okay. Let us understand this equation mathematically, like we have seen for all the other cases. Let us go to our standard form. By this point, you are already familiar with how to do this thing. It's just again what is escape not working anyway. So del square u del t square is equal to c square del square u del x square. Let us write it in the form that we know. So same equation can be written as c square del square u del x square minus del square u del t square equal to 0. Okay. If you compare with this equation, the two independent variables are again x and time t. Okay. So a is equal to c square, b is equal to 0 because there is no mixed derivative, and c is equal to minus 1. Okay, there is a double derivative of time t, so c equal to minus 1. To avoid confusion with the speed c, which we use as small c, I am using coefficients as capital letters now. Okay, capital A, capital B, capital C, so that you do not confuse with this c square, this c small c, this c small c, and our coefficients are capital C. So what is the value of b square minus 4ac? B is 0, so minus 4ac is minus c square into minus 1, so plus c square, plus 4c square, sorry, which is greater than 0. Okay. According to our condition, if you go back to yesterday's notes, you will see that this is a hyperbolic equation, and there should be two characteristic lines for this, two real characteristic lines for this. Okay, nature of equation is hyperbolic, and there should be two real and characteristic lines for this. We will try to find these characteristic lines. Okay. So before that, let me just elaborate here, because I have written here. What is the example of some type of problem which is governed by this equation? As I have described, say there is a 1D flow and some pressure disturbance is given at some point in the 1D flow. Okay, the pressure wave will propagate along the flow. Okay, and it will propagate at a certain speed which is equal to the speed of sound. Why it is speed of sound? Because speed of sound is a very colloquial term. Actually, speed of sound is nothing but speed of propagation of pressure waves in a compressible flow. So it will travel at the speed that is governed by the, that is an example of. So we have established that this is a hyperbolic equation according to our condition, and there should be two characteristic lines. What is the nature of these two characteristic lines? Let us see. Let me remove here, because we have already established that there are two characteristic lines. Okay, so again let us go. I have to show you the previous class note. This was our solution of the quadratic equation, remember, which we said that will give us the information about the characteristic line. That for two independent variables y and x, depending on minus b plus minus b root over b square minus 4ac by 2a, this actually was wrong. If you remember, this should have been plus b. Okay, I hope you have noted it down. Otherwise, please note it down, because we had minus b here. As some of you correctly pointed, this should be plus b. Okay. So the solution of the equation is dy dx is equal to b plus minus b square minus 4ac by 2a. Okay. So for our case, what are the independent variables y and x? The independent variable x is still x. the independent variable y is t, time t, right? Any confusion here? Two independent variables are there. We have
So your voice is cutting.
written
Your voice is cutting, sir.
So voice is cutting too much.
the yes, yes, please. I could not hear you.
Sir, your voice was cutting too much.
Okay, because of poor internet. I think it is because of poor internet connection. Whenever this happens, please let me know so that I can repeat what has happened. Okay. Sometimes the internet connection is poor. I was saying that dy dx equal to b plus minus b square minus 4ac root of that divided by 2a is the solution of the characteristic. It gives us the information of the characteristics, and depending on this we have determined whether the characteristic is imaginary, real, or two real values are there or one real value is there. Okay, based on whether it is plus like whether b square minus 4ac is positive, negative, or 0. So this dy dx was based upon the assumption that y and x are the independent variables. In our case, what is the variable analogous to x? It is still x, right? Our independent variable is still x. And what is the very independent variable analogous to y? It is the variable t, small t, time. Okay. So instead of dy dx, we should now write as the same thing as dt dx equal to b plus minus b square minus 4ac by 2a. Okay. Same thing. Now what is the value of b in our case? From this equation, b is 0. Remember these values. B is equal to 0, c is equal to minus 1, a is equal to small c square. Okay, c equal to minus 1, a equal to small c square. B equal to 0. So 0 plus minus 0. A is equal to c square and c is equal to minus 1. Okay. So minus 4ac is equal to plus 4c square. And at the bottom you have 2 into a, so 2c square. So the solution of this equation is dt dx equal to plus minus 1 by c. Okay. Or dx dt is plus minus c. Or x is equal to plus minus c into t plus some constant c1. This constant c1 depends on the initial location of the point which we are considering for the perturbation. Okay, it will be clear in a couple of minutes. It is the location where we are giving the perturbation in the x direction. If we ignore that, if we consider that we are giving the perturbation at x equal to 0, we have the equation as x. Yes. Yes.
Sir, in under root there will be 4cq, I think, because a is equal to c square. That means the cq will be no.
No. A is equal to c square, but c is minus 1 only. Capital C. This is capital C. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
And this is small c. My writing is not clear. Small c is the velocity, speed. Capital C is the coefficient.
Okay, sir.
Okay. That's why we are distinguished here. Okay. So this is b square capital minus 4a capital c capital. C capital is equal to minus 1 and a capital is equal to small c square. Okay. So it is 4c square. Okay. So you can derive on your own. Later on you just do it. X equal to ct and x equal to minus ct. If you consider the constant, x equal to c1 plus ct and x equal to c1 minus ct. Okay. These are the equation of some lines, right? It gives us the variation of x in terms of t. In the 2D domain, mathematical 2D domain, not physical space, where the domain varies from x equal to 0 to L and t is equal to 0 to T last. Let us take a look at what happens. Okay. This is exactly similar to what we have done for the parabolic case. Okay, exactly similar to what we have done for the parabolic case. So we have a domain, actually physically 1D domain, like a say pipe of length L, okay, or a rod of length L, where the perturbation is given. Okay, I am hitting the rod at some point with a force, so the pressure should travel through the rod at the speed of sound. So the rod has a length from 0 to L, and we are solving for the position of the pressure wave or any variation due to the pressure wave. So what is the pressure in the location or any other change with varying time. So time varies from t equal to 0 to t equal to t last. Okay. So our entire solution domain can be encompassed, means can be covered by this blue rectangle. Okay, 0 to L and 0 to t last, similar to our parabolic problem. Okay, up to this point there is no issue. Now let us consider that initially nothing was there, no perturbation, nothing was there. At some time t equal to 40 seconds, again just like for the sake of saying, I am saying t equal to 40 seconds, it can be any t. We provide a perturbation, okay, some pressure fluctuation in a 1D pipe fluid, or some pressure fluctuation in a solid body, okay, compressible, not rigid, okay, compressible solid body at a point P, which may be at somewhere along between 0 and L. Okay, it can be 50% along the distance or 60% along the distance. Okay. So our characteristic lines from this point, how will the characteristic lines look like? From this point onwards, one characteristic line equation is minus C into T. Okay. So minus C into T. So with increasing time, this will look like this. Another line is plus C into T. And if you consider that the initial location is C1, constant C1, so this equation of this first line is C1 minus Ct, and the second line is C1 plus Ct. Okay. So these two are the characteristic lines. And what does it physically signify? Okay. Mathematically, we are saying that these are the characteristic lines, like passing through this point and going like with a slope minus C and plus C. Okay, with a slope minus C and plus C. So mathematically it is what it means, but physically it signifies that any pressure fluctuation that I give at this point can only travel at a certain finite speed, which is equal to the speed of the pressure wave or speed of the sound in the solid or fluid, okay, or speed of the wave propagation. If the speed of the wave propagation is equal to c, okay, if the speed of the wave propagation is equal to c at a time t after this perturbation is given, okay, at a time t after this perturbation is given, okay, let us consider I am putting my cursor somewhere above this perturbation, okay, at a time t after this perturbation is given, how much has the wave traveled? The wave will travel in both directions, and it can only travel with a velocity of c. Okay, so it has traveled a distance of c into t because time t has passed after this point P. So it will travel a distance of c into t in one direction and c into t in the other direction. Okay, so basically the wave front, the perturbation information falls on this characteristic line. Okay, so physically it means that the characteristic line gives us the location up to which the information has passed at a certain time t, okay, or up to which the perturbation information regarding the perturbation has passed, or up to which the pressure wave has moved. Okay, at any point beyond this line there is no information about any perturbation what has at t. Okay, there is no information, so pressure wave has not reached there. Okay, if I am at this point, I will show you and draw again, although my drawing skills are poor, but let me try to draw again here. Okay, so to make this very clear. So you have a rod of length x equal to 0 to x equal to L, or a fluid, okay, fluid in a pipe, 1D fluid, and I am giving up. So initially there is no perturbation. Now I am giving a perturbation, like a fluctuation in pressure. Maybe you have suddenly changed the pressure from 0 to 100 kPa. Okay, this is what I am calling as a perturbation. Okay. So what is happening there at this time? Okay. So the pressure wave is going to travel here along this direction with speed c and along this direction with speed c. Okay. So after some time t, what is the location of the pressure? It has gone to some point here and some point here, which is distant. This distance is c into t. Okay. Again, this distance also is c into t. So the wave front is now at a point which is minus ct from this perturbation point and plus ct at that perturbation point. So in terms of our t and x coordinate, the perturbation was given here. Okay. So at the time t, the perturbation has moved to some point which is located at minus ct. This is minus ct, means ct in the negative direction, and in the other side it has moved to ct in the positive direction. Basically the wave has moved in both directions. Okay, that pressure fluctuation has moved in both directions by ct because time elapsed is t at this point. Okay, t is equal to t. This is 0 at which the perturbation is given. So this is what we have seen from the characteristic lines. Okay, so depending on the information has more and more distance. So at this point the t was less, so ct was at a much more future time, the t is higher and ct is higher. So always the distance is c into t. Okay, so always the information is bounded by these two lines, okay, which we are calling as the characteristic line. And why again these are characteristic? Because see, if we have changed the pressure here to very high value, some fluctuation has been given to 100 kP, and the pressure waves have traveled here. Some pressure change has happened here. Say the pressure has changed here to 100 kP or 50 kP. But as we have not, it is still 0 kPa. It does not have any information because the wave has not passed there. So if you plot the pressure, you will see that there is a jump in pressure along the x direction at this point. Okay, there is a jump in pressure. So it means that there is a discontinuity in pressure. Okay, or any other wave property, there is a discontinuity across this line, and hence as a result, this line signifies, this entire line signifies locus of the disk and known as the characteristic line. Is it clear to you what I mean by this?
Yes, sir.
So I'm also eating something. Excuse me. So I am going very slowly here to avoid any confusion. Okay. So students who are understanding quickly, please bear with this so that everybody, we see that everybody understands. So now this region, these two red lines bounded by the characteristic is being shown by the hashed blue line. This is known as the domain of influence. Okay, compared to our parabolic equation, I have come to the parabolic equation. There may be some lag. It may take some time for you to come to the same page. But now I am showing the domain of influence of the parabolic equation. Here we see that the domain of influence is anything beyond the time t, but across all x values. I am going back to the hyperbolic equation now. I have come back to the hyperbolic equation. It may again take some time for you due to lag. But here you see that the domain of influence for this point P is all the time beyond this point time T, but not all the space. The space is bounded by the characteristic lines. Okay, only the points which fall within this line is influenced. Any point space. Okay, so physically I am standing at some value of x equal to something, or I have a pitot tube or some pressure measuring device at some x value. Okay, which is say at this point. So I will not feel any change at this point unless I go to a time. If I draw a vertical line, it crosses the characteristic line. At that time, the pressure wave will reach me, and I will feel okay. Some change in pressure has occurred here. Okay, so now I am within the domain of influence. Otherwise, I will not feel any change before that. Okay, so the domain of influence for a hyperbolic equation is bounded by its two characteristic lines. For a parabolic equation, it is bounded by a single characteristic line and its boundary condition and the last like the domain end. For this case, this is bounded by the two characteristic lines. Same thing I have just stated here, so that in the notes you don't have to write, everything is stated. Any disturbance or change given at point P in space and time. Point P is a point in both space and time, not only space. That is important. Okay, and in space and time can only influence the zone bounded by the characteristic lines above the point P. There is a discontinuity across the characteristic lines, and the information from P cannot go beyond the line. No way can the information go beyond these lines. Okay, there is no way the information can go beyond these lines. If you are at a very small time and at this region, you will not feel any change. If you are at a very farther, then you will come within the domain of influence and you will feel the change. With a compressible fluid. Okay, well, for incompressible fluid, there is no point in this discussion because information travels at an infinite rate. Pressure waves only travel at a finite rate for compressible fluid. So I have 1D cylinder filled with compressed, and at x equal to C1 give a pressure fluctuation. Okay, pressure fluctuation means suddenly I change. Krishna Kumar is asking, is it something like a Mach cone? It is related, but not exactly like a Mach cone. Okay, I don't want to go into the details of Mach cone in this course. Okay, the characteristic lines are not exactly the see, and so I have a 2D problem. If I have a 2D, in a 2D course, and if you don't understand, it's fine. So no questions will not come from it. To answer Krishna Kumar's question, say the perturbation is given at this point. Okay, perturbation is given.
Sir, too much voice is breaking.
Aircraft itself is moving.
Sir, too much.
Voice is breaking.
Nothing.
Okay, so I will wait for some seconds and then again will continue. Let's wait. Can you still hear me, or is the voice still breaking? Anyone? Aniket, voice is breaking? No, okay. I am trying to explain
Now,
Krishna Kumar's. Okay, I am trying to explain Krishna Kumar's question. Okay, that whether it is related to Mach cone or not. So what I am saying is that it is not exactly like Mach cone. So we don't want to go into the details of Mach cone in this course, but I just want to give you a brief idea of what is a Mach cone. Say you have this, you have a static source, your object is static, from where I am giving the perturbation, like what I have been describing. Then the perturbation will move, or the pressure wave will move in all directions with a velocity equal to speed of sound, c. Okay. So the distance covered by the pressure waves will be equal to c into time t in all directions. Okay. Now if the object or the source of the perturbation itself is moving, like a jet aircraft, okay, say the jet aircraft is moving, so in that case the jet aircraft can move at subsonic speed or supersonic speed or sonic speed. If the jet aircraft moves at subsonic speed, okay, then the speed at which the point P moves in one direction is still slower than how far the information regarding the perturbation is traveling, okay, from the initial point where it was. Okay, I cannot draw it here, I don't want to go into the details. So in that case the information still travels faster, okay, as compared to the speed of the aircraft. But in case if the jet aircraft flows at a supersonic speed, in case the aircraft flows at a supersonic speed, in that case the source of the perturbation, which is the jet aircraft itself, okay, moves at a faster rate as compared to the perturbations that were originally originated. Okay, maybe again drawing is too difficult here. I also don't remember properly, but I can explain briefly. Okay, don't take it for granted, but say the jet aircraft is at this point at a moment. Okay, and after some time delta t, the jet aircraft is at this point. Okay, so the jet aircraft is moving with a velocity u. So this distance is u into delta t. Okay, the distance between these 2 points. So the initial wave, pressure wave that has traveled from here, say u is equal to twice the speed of sound. Okay, u is equal to twice the speed of sound. Means it is a supersonic aircraft. So the initial wave that has traveled from this point when time was 0, how much has it traveled in all directions? It's a 2D problem. Okay, it has traveled to a distance c into t, c into delta t. So if I draw a circle here, this is now the pressure wave front up to which the pressure wave has traveled when the pressure wave was originated at time t equal to 0. Okay, only it has traveled up to this point. This point is at a distance of c into delta t, which is half the distance of u into delta t. Is this clear, Krishna Kumar? Up to this point, pressure wave has traveled less distance as compared to the object. Okay, because object velocity is twice as compared to pressure wave. Now if I what about the pressure wave that is generating at this point? Okay, so I am again traveling by another distance u into delta t. Another delta t time has passed. Okay, so the pressure wave from this point now this is just coinciding like tangential circle. Okay, after time delta t it has again passed in all directions to up to half u into delta t. So u is into delta t, so c into delta t is equal to half u into delta t. So the pressure wave has passed half u into delta t from the second point after time t is equal to 2 delta t. Okay, because this pressure wave has started later at time t equal to delta t. What about the original pressure wave? What is the location of the original pressure wave? It has started at t equal to 0. So after 2 delta t time, it has traveled to a distance of half U into 2 delta T. Okay. So the original pressure wave is now at a point like this. Okay. Means it has traveled to a distance of in all directions U into delta T, and the new pressure wave has traveled only U into half delta T. And we are currently at what point? The jet aircraft is at what point? The jet aircraft has already come to this point after 2 delta T. It is much beyond the pressure waves. Okay, because it is much faster, it's supersonic. And at this moment, the pressure waves that has originated has not traveled anywhere, because this is the current time. The pressure wave is still a point at this moment. Okay. So now, if I join the locus of, or if I join the tangents of all these circles, I can draw circles like this. Okay. This diagram is not accurate. Okay. Let me see how to erase this. No. So imagine a tangent here, so that it goes through all the circles. Okay. And another tangent here, just tangential to the circles. It will be tangential to the circles. Okay. It can be easily shown that this will be tangential to all the circles, even if you have intermediate points. This pressure waves, no pressure wave has, whatever has originated previously also, no pressure wave has gone beyond these tangents. Okay. No pressure wave has gone beyond this tangent. If it is a 2D, these tangents are two lines. If it is a 3D problem, this tangent is a cone. Okay. This is known as the Mach cone. This is known as the Mach cone, and no information has passed beyond the point, and it is also similar to a characteristic line. This is not equal to shock wave. Shock wave is something different. This is like a characteristic line, as Krishna Kumar was saying, but this is known as Mach cone. This is not included in our syllabus. Okay, please don't get bothered with this. I'm just explaining because he had asked the question. Krishna Kumar, is your query clear? I hope it is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So we have run out of time. Let us stop here because a lot of things are there to discuss, and we will continue in the next class. Okay. We will continue first with the same example of this hyperbolic equation. I will give you a brief glimpse. So we have already discussed what is domain of influence, but there is something called domain of dependence also, like how the value of P is dependent on. So that we will discuss the domain of dependence. We will take a particular case of a 1D nozzle. You already know a 1D converging nozzle, that depending on the back pressure we can have a choked condition. That we will study, like why this choked condition happens. Then I will take you to some other general case which is not the standard case. So the standard case are there in all the books. I will take you to a general case which is for a compressible flow, potential flow over it's known as a linearized small perturbation flow, which is for a thin angle of attack and thin bodies. Okay, like a small thin wedge is there, like aerofoil, very thin aerofoil, okay, or plate, and the flow over the plate. In that case, we will see that the governing equation is something like this, and we will see what is the characteristic, and we will see that you cannot say whether this equation is elliptic or hyperbolic or parabolic unless you know the value of Mach number. We will see that depending on the Mach number, it can be either case, parabolic, elliptic or hyperbolic. Okay. So it means that if I want to solve this equation, my solution algorithm has to take into account that the solution can be of any type, and it should be a very general algorithm that we should develop. Okay. So these things we will discuss in the next class, and we will go to some slightly more detailed about general second order
Sir, you are not audible. Sir, you are not audible.
Until I think because my mic is switched on. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think because of internet connection, poor internet connection. Okay, let us stop the recording.